Today we are visited by one of the biggest names in Elestrals, a field that currently includes about 5 total people. This individual has surpassed all of his competitors. Wirtz, I think that's it. A member of the Elestrals, the one, the only, Bean Soldier TV. How are you doing today, Mr. Bean Soldier TV?
Fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm doing all right. I couldn't resist a cheap shot at Wirtz.
You gotta.
So you are one of, if not the most accomplished Elestrals casters, and so I was hoping I could pick your brain today about a little bit of a weird situation facing the game in its entirety. If you all are unfamiliar, on the Elestrals channel, a combination of Bean Soldier TV and Caleb and Swolax and Kevin, there is a video that just went up about a deck called Fives. Would you like to sort of explain what Fives, or crab aggro, as they're calling it, is and what it represents for the game?
Yeah, so basically Fives, or aka crabs, is a very aggro control deck that all it basically tries to do is establish a big number every single turn that you can't answer by any other strategy over the course of the game. 5 is just a very big, difficult stat line to deal with in this current era, that previously only Thunder was able to check through cards like Spark It, ripping those 5s out of the hand and counteracting with Zeus. But with the ban of Spark It, it's kind of gotten a little out of hand with cards like Moss Station, and even Lavalith to punish any deck that would play Divines to get over these big stat lines.
It's a weird position insofar as I would say, you know, with a couple of exceptions, almost every other Elestrals deck has like a competent linear game plan that is not just like attack until they're dead. It's like, you know, Frost is trying to like cryoling a whole bunch of times, you know, Morph is doing Morph things. Thunder Nexus was trying to do a Nexus in Thunder. Even decks like Earthbeat have like establish an Equilinx and a Demeter lines, and I don't know, Lockagon is around.
Yeah,
you know,
he's
I
there.
guess resolve Eddie and then resolve Rock in a Hard Place. But this deck is mostly just, I will now summon the highest attack guy and attack over and over, right?
Yep, every single turn.
And it's currently only seen really experimentation in the Frostfall meta, because that's what's being played for events. But as you all have pointed out in this video, it's also gonna be pretty good in Daybreak too, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of support that gets released in Daybreak for 5s specifically. I think I've been preaching about this card for a while, but Spectaris is potentially one of, if not the strongest card released in Daybreak, because of its suppression mechanic and being able to run over a lot of other big bodies that have effects to make them big.
This is why we can't call it crabs, by the
Yeah.
way, because if Spectaris is released and this deck is still playable, then like Moss Station gets less good, Moose Station gets less good, you know. And if there's no crabs in the crab deck, it's going to look stupid.
Exactly. That's exactly.
Well, okay, so today, you know, we can extol the virtues of 5s all day. I think we both know that it's like, it's been called, I think Dymax called it this, it's like the skill, it's like the floor. Like if your deck can't consistently beat 5s, it's not even really worth considering.
Yeah.
But today, you know, it's pretty easy to think of cards that counter other individual strategies. You know, Thunder Nexus puts a bunch of spirits on board. Well, there's a ton of cards that punish that. What theoretically could we do about 5s? Like at present, because it's just a loose assemblage of cards that are so spirit efficient that they overwhelm less efficient strategies, there's no game plan you can sort of subvert. So how can we invent a card that beats a deck that's just good stuff turbo?
I'll be honest. When you initially asked me this question, I've been thinking about this the past couple of days. I still don't know, without immediately thinking of a floodgate.
It's like, well, we could always just print Gravity
Well,
Bind,
like I was
you
thinking,
know?
like not even like Gravity Bind. I was thinking more of like Obnoxious Celtic Guardian.
Yeah,
so, like,
can't be killed by a 5.
Can't be killed by a 5 or higher. So like they have to misenchant a Vis to beat over it, or like purposely make their 5s smaller, which make the matchup much more reasonable.
Does that card also lose to Spectaris, by the way?
No, because they wouldn't be able to attack into it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
It cannot be even attacked
Yeah.
by a 5. Okay. It's a good first draft. So, to think about, I guess, how we could resolve the outstanding 5's dilemma, I guess let's just, like, see if we can isolate the things that makes 5's feel kind of oppressive relative to other decks. For me, the number one thing would have to be how spirit efficient they are.
Absolutely.
We talked about this in a call a couple of days ago, but there is a moment against 5s where, like, you are set up, you have your stuff, and you go, okay, can I get a spirit count? And you're at, like, 7, and they're at, like, 18.
Yeah.
Just because they don't need to commit anything to the board. All their creatures are the most efficient removal they could ever be, and the only way you're beating them is by committing at least 2 spirits to an earthquake. So maybe a sort of spirit catch-up mechanic, a la who's the current guy who does that? It's one of the liths, Verdalith.
Oh yeah, yeah. Verdalith does that. I mean, any of the smaller healers like Jurtagua, Catarant, Nemesail, or any of like even the set 1 healers like Quackle and Sluggle.
We by the way, we don't have a name for these yet. The Jurtaguas, the Nemesails. What are you all calling them?
Honestly, I didn't even think of putting a name on them. I would just call them just mini Ambrosias. But
I heard Caleb call them receivers, which I like, but it's a little sexual. I think maybe. Sound off in the comments. Get a spirit, heal 2. What are we calling that?
They're definitely receivers. They're definitely receivers.
Oh no. And the other ones are pretty easy to on cast heal 3. Those are the gulls.
Yeah.
Sluggle,
Yeah.
Quaggle.
Yeah.
No, but the problem with Verdalith as kind of an answer to 5s is that he sucks. He only recoups, I think, the same number of spirits as it costs to cast him, right?
No,
it's 4 for 2.
It heals 4. I think the bigger issue is that it revives only Earth.
Yeah.
Rather than just generic spirits.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have to be playing a critical mass of Earth in order to even 1, cast the Verdalith, or 2, take advantage of the heal.
And while that 7 is that's a big number. 5s kind of has a problem with that. It does suck that he really can't ever get aggro.
Yeah. It only having 3 attack is really rough. And I think that's what a lot of the healers have issues with. But I mean, to be fair, if the healers had more stats, 5s would just play them.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's another issue too with trying to figure out something to beat 5s.
We can't give them a card they're gonna play.
Yeah, like you can't print a 5 healer because then 5s would end up playing the 5 healer. So, the solution has to be something that is still a tiny little guy, or a counter rune or an invoke rune that deals with them without giving 5s another tool. And I think that is also the problem.
So when it comes to, I guess, sort of things that 5s don't do that other decks do, I guess there are some things we could use as like a preamble to an effect that would maybe lock it from 5s, right?
Yeah.
Like the thing that, just casting a guy every turn is resource efficient, but it also means you're not doing a bunch of stuff. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, 5s doesn't like Nexus really ever, right?
Almost never.
They get into counter wars quite frequently.
Yeah.
Just like back row type shenanigans. And is there any way I'm thinking of a divine blessing style effect where it's like disenchant from your field if you do X. But the X would have to be kill your opponent if there's a 5 on their field. Do 20.
I mean, I could definitely see that working. I think even on top of that, I think if you want 5s to be even less reliable in their stat line, I think you can look at cards like Don't Poke the Bear,
Oh, I knew you would bring up
Yeah,
a bear card.
I am Bear's biggest defender. I think that like bears are crazy, but a card like Don't Poke the Bear, and I guess to some extent Argo as well, having battle phase runes that lower stats, so that they can't rely on that 5 stat line as much, is probably the way to go to counteract the stat line. Because like the issue isn't even like they're like, yes, they're very cost effective in how much they play, but it's also how sticky the 5s are. And if you have ways to remove them that aren't Earthquake, that aren't Laurels, cards like that then advance your own game state on the crackback, I think that probably is the way to deal with these 5 cards.
And the reason we're not seeing like Argo massively being played everywhere is it costs 4.
Yeah, it's a lot. And it's pretty much only good if your opponent is attacking into you, so that you remove their Elestral on the attack declaration so that you can swing direct.
So they take 2 off the Tunic and then 1 additional.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if like even other artifacts see play just to get like a buff in stat line. Like if like even like Hammer of Hephaestus or Bag of Winds would get played with Argo.
If Hephaestus sweep occurs as a result of 5's dominance, I will be very excited.
I think it'd be cool.
Do you think potentially, on the topic of these Elestrals, or these runes that modify attack stats, that effect attached to a critter, like on P-Gleam, is just not worth considering? Like, it's a cool effect that just runs into Tsunami, just runs into, resting. Or not resting, shield. This one specifically also runs into Poison Tipped Arrow.
Yeah. I think the bigger issue, so like P-Gleam's effect is really cool, but in like the current iteration of the 5s deck, P-Gleam doesn't do a whole lot because it sets the base attack to 0. So like a card like this would still crash with P-Gleam because it gains 1. Or Spectaris would gain 1 because it's suppressing the P-Gleam. So it doesn't do enough, unfortunately. I think the perfect balance is a card like Eddie, where changing the position of an Elestral would out all the 5s. So it would also play around cards like Tsunami and Dense Fog because it's a water. I think that's just how the card was designed. But like even if that effect was on any Elestral, I would still probably play that because it can out almost everybody.
The Eddie situation is very funny as well because it does read like a perfect answer to a lot of the 5 stuff. In a deck, water adjacent that already has a lot of powerful tools and theoretically could be a contender. But they're just playing Eddie now, right?
Yeah, 5's just playing Eddie.
It just seems like a really good card for it, too.
Yeah, like any 5 defender that 5s could not deal with, like Rabbit, for example, just now has an out that isn't Moss Station. It's great.
Outside of, there is always, of course, the option of printing the Floodgate. Like, just a Floodgate that says if your last name is Eris, then you cannot attack. But is there any possibility that the solution to this could just be a deck with a game plan that is so streamlined that Gemini Elf Beats isn't going to be able to stand up to it? I think a little bit to like Morfrost, which can basically do its thing every game.
Yeah.
Just happens to have a miserably bad matchup against 5s.
Yeah.
A version of that maybe has a game plan that lines up a little bit better with just guys attacking that negate on deck.
Like, are you saying, like, print a card like Spectaris for, like, every archetype?
Oh, God, no. I'm saying print a card like Magical Scientist.
Okay. We're starting to reach some dangerous territory right now.
There's a crazy ass combo that just outpaces 5s,
Sure, yeah.
Why would you ever do that,
I think that there are some strategies that are going to get printed in Daybreak that will outpace 5s. testing since that video went up has kind of led to believe that maybe Fives isn't the best deck in Daybreak. Obviously, still one of the best contenders, and it's probably the best like new player friendly deck to get into. But I think when designing strategies from here on out, there needs to be some type of gameplay in terms of removal, in terms of like use of counter runes or searchable counter runes, or ways to take advantage of nexusing to deal with these stat lines that currently there really isn't. A lot of times you are just having to rely on non-engine, or like the newly released Cryoblast is crazy, but who wants to play Frost Spirits? Literally no one.
Not me.
Yeah, literally no one. Even though it is like cost advantageous with only like one spirit. Laurels is the same way, right? I don't want to have to tech specific spirits against these certain matchups to do what is good against Fives. I think decks along the lines of what Thunder Nexus used to do, like pre-Spark It ban, I think is where the game should go, because you can just gain so much advantage over the course of a game that me summoning a 5 doesn't matter, right? I don't know if you necessarily agree.
No, I think you're spot on. So that means that our options are a Floodgate a la Obnoxious Celtic Guardian, a broken combo deck that warps everything around it, or exactly Spark Hit. I mean, that's like not a bad place to be. I feel like we've got options at this point.
Yeah, and like, I don't know. It's either that or print counter runes that actually matter into the Fives matchup, like a la Sakuretsu armor, rather than shield. Because like shield doesn't deal with the problem at all. Because you just get to cast it again on the next turn.
And I think that becomes a lot more frequent, like, as an effect analogous to Don't Poke the Bear, but not locked into bears, maybe comes out. Like, it seems like pretty obvious design space that at some point we'll get a counter rune that's like, the attacking Elestral gets -3 attack, or something like that.
Yeah. It's either that or you actually print Trap Hole instead of Poison Tipped Arrow.
Yeah.
But that might be a little too strong.
I was like, PTA already insanely
Yeah, PTA is already crazy. I don't know if we want Trap Hole. But, yeah, something along those lines I think would be really good into these stat lines in particular. Until
then, cast Argo, cast Poison Tunic. You're going 2 for 4. It's not that bad.
It could be worse. Could be worse.
And they spent a spirit to cast the guy. That's 3. And then you're going to attack. That's 4. You go even.
Exactly.
You go even.
I think, honestly, the biggest issue with Argo is just you have to play it early game. You cannot use that card late game.
Yeah. It's like 7 spirits left, and it's like, oh, jeez.
Yeah, that's not good. Not good.
Great first, and there's also a Garnet. It's like really irritating.
Yeah, it's not good.
It goes from hand though.
Yeah. Soft card.
All right, I think we have completely resolved the problem of Fives. The problem with Fives. That's what we'll call it. The problem with Fives. If people want to see Fives gameplay, or as you discover these decks that you think are competitive against it, where can they go?
You can find us at the Elestrals channel. We've been posting a lot of videos, especially going into Daybreak. I know we have a bunch of deck profiles that are pretty much ready to go up on the channel that have been tested at locals or like tested within the NAUTS. And some of them are quite spicy, and some of them might even beat Fives. So if you do want to see those decks, I'm sure that our links will be in the description down below. Obviously, any support is greatly appreciated. And if you want to see Fives get absolutely demolished, subscribe to us.
That is exciting. This is the kind of like kind of self-serving though, right? It's like where could they find you? The literal biggest Elestrals channel.
Not anymore. Not anymore. You have
guys,
us beat.
check out TeamSamuraiX1.com. Oh my god. You all are actually the team of Samurai fame.
Oh, yeah.
Guys, if you want to see incredible Elestrals gameplay, I'm telling you, Wirtz TCG is gonna go crazy. All right, that's it.
Yeah, okay.